I've always wanted to make a Draw My Life, and I think I'm finally at the point where I have some stories to tell. So, my name's Colt, and this is a story about my life. This story begins all the way back in the year 2000. It was the year the GameCube was announced, the Grinch stole Christmas, and I was born. My dad wanted a son, and my older sister wanted a little sister, so the universe said bada bing, bada boom, and granted both their wishes. On March 14th, 2000, I was born along with my twin sister, Michaela. I'm 1 minute older, by the way. My dad in his younger years was a horse jockey and raced chariots, which is where my name Colt comes from. My family consisted of my mom, dad, older sister Sage, my twin sister Michaela, and our dog Penny. I grew up in a little old house on a 2-acre plot of land in a place called Cornwall, New York. The only thing notable from this time was apparently I pushed my sister off a table and broke her arm, but who's to say? Oh, and I think it's called febrile seizure syndrome, but when I was 2 years old, I had a really high fever, and while I was laying on my dad's chest, I had a seizure and stopped breathing. The 911 operator walked him through CPR until medics arrived, and at 2 years old, I technically made out with my dad. But before you start making jokes, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him doing that, so shout out dad, hands down, best kiss of my life. I had a lot of energy as a kid. It felt like I had to run everywhere I went. The doctor suspected that I might have a sprinkle of ADHD, but instead of pills, they put me in soccer, and my dad signed up as the coach. Our team was called the Grizzlies, and this is where I started making a lot of my friends. As a kid, my dad built houses, and my mom worked at Verizon. I remember one time when I was playing with Michaela, she gave me one of her dolls so that I had one to play with her too. I was all excited, and I went to show my dad, and I was like, "Look dad, look what Mickey gave me." He stopped for a moment and gave one hard look at that doll and said, "Oh, you're coming to work with me." And after that, I went to work with my dad every day. My favorite time of the year was Christmas. The holiday spirit made everyone a little happier, and it was bring your kids to work day, so my mom would take Michaela and I to meet Santa. Oh, and remember that 2-acre plot of land that we lived on? Well, on Christmas Eve 2005, my dad surprised my family with a new house that he built on the other acre of our lawn, and we still live there 20 years later. It kind of looks like the house you draw as a kid, except it's huge, and I finally had my very own room. I noticed I was always a lot shorter than most kids in school, and I can't say I was really bullied, but people just like to point out the obvious.
You're really short. Okay.
In 2nd grade, I remember a little Filipino dude walked into Miss Hirschberger's class. His name was Griffin, and he was short, just like me. We ended up becoming best friends, and Griffin introduced me to something that would shape the next couple years of my life. We played hours of Halo Reach, Infection, Forge, the grind for that Inheritor skull helmet that I was never able to reach. I still want it, by the way. Around this time, I met another new kid in town. He went by the name of Neurotic Flea Zero, aka Hunter. He had an Xbox too, and became a part of our squad. – 2012 rolled around, and Call of Duty Black Ops 2 came out, and they packed some serious crack in there, because I don't think I left my house that year. Days, weeks, months, years of my life was playing with friends online, and these were honestly some of the best times of my life. I've been through war, survived apocalypses, and traveled all over the universe with these boys. These weren't just my best friends. These were my brothers. Middle school was really fun. I had a lot of friends and a lot of confidence. The only bad thing at the time was that I still was really small. Them Filipino genes, man. I graduated middle school in 2014, and life was simple. No job, no girls, just Xbox and not a care in the world. Until there was. Being a freshman in high school felt like being back at square one. I was a big dog as an 8th grader, but now I was back at the bottom of the food chain. Everyone was hitting puberty. Guys were getting muscles and girls were growing boobs. I made it onto my JV soccer team, and I had a huge crush on a girl on the varsity team. Let's call her Gertrude. I didn't know how to talk to girls, so anytime I'd see her, I'd pretty much just walk the other way, but man, did she pull my heartstrings. During one of our away games versus our rival team, I got absolutely destroyed going up for a header, landed on my shoulder, and my collarbone didn't stand a chance. It's kind of tough fixing a collarbone because you really can't put a cast on it unless you do one of these. So for the 3rd year in a row, I had broken the same collarbone. I went to the hospital, got an x-ray, they said, yep, it's broken, and after hours of scans and tests, I finally got home to some good news. There was a text from an unknown number saying something like, "Hey, it's Gertrude, I heard you got hurt. I wanted to make sure you're okay, smiley face." Smiley face? I was texting her back trying to play it cool and stuff like, "Sup, Trude, didn't even hurt, you should see the other guy." And on top of that, my mom ordered my favorite Chinese food for dinner, and wallahi, my fortune said love is in the air. I was so excited that I went to send a picture to my sister, and I accidentally sent it to Gertrude. Vibes were absolutely murdered. Watch Mojo's top 5 biggest fumbles of all time, and she never texted me after that. In 2015, I stumbled upon a YouTuber that was making daily vlogs in New York City. His name was Casey Neistat, and like clockwork, every day after school, I tuned into Casey's new vlog. After a year or so, my brain finally reached a point of finding purpose, and I had an epiphany. I had so much fun watching Casey's vlogs, I bet it'd be even more fun to make them myself. So that's when I started my YouTube channel, 8 years ago, which you're watching on right now, and I was so set on not going to college because I was gonna be a YouTuber. Word started to spread, and I quickly became the guy with a YouTube channel at school. I'd make the most random, pointless vlogs about anything, and it was the first time in my life that I felt like I was made to do something. My plan ultimately failed as I graduated high school with less than 1,000 subscribers, so off to college it was, and at this point, reality was setting in that being a YouTuber was harder than I thought. I ended up going to college about 45 minutes away and majored in computer science to do the secure path and make my parents proud. That spark that I had to pursue YouTube was starting to fade, and I stopped making videos for a while. And then 2020 happened. The whole world shut down and everyone's lives were put on pause. What was initially a 2-week vacation turned into a 1.5 years of isolation. I spent my time trying to learn stocks and lost all my money day trading. The only thing I gained out of quarantine was how to solve a Rubik's Cube, and I picked up skateboarding, which ends up being an important skill for later in the story. The pandemic started when I was a sophomore and ended when I was about to be a senior. That past year, I had helped my dad finishing up his last house, and he gave me a generous cut for helping him out, and told me, don't spend it all in one place. I spent it all in one go on my dream camera setup. You know that saying, being at the right place at the right time? Well, the crazy thing is just 2 days after getting this camera, I was scrolling Instagram and a YouTuber that I watched by the name of Steezy Kane posted a story looking for a local filmer to help shoot a public snowball fight that he was hosting in New York City that next morning. I had no idea how to use my camera, but you learn fast when there's an opportunity like that, and I shot my shot. To my surprise, this one DM would be the catalyst that changed my life. Soon after, I got a notification on my phone, a DM back asking me to come out the next day to help film. The next morning, I found myself on my way to New York City. I had never taken the train by myself before, so I brought my friend Foz along to help film. When we got to the city, there was a whole crowd of people that came for the fight. Foz and I were B-cam getting longer shots of the fight. He had a main shooter covering himself, and I was locked in trying to get the most epic shots, still barely knowing how to use this camera. I was freezing my butt off, but there was no place I'd rather be. And to make the day even crazier, I heard someone call out a familiar name in the distance, and a figure emerged out of the chaos. None other than New York City's very own Sneeko. This day couldn't get any better, and the spark I felt for YouTube was reignited. This was the closest I had felt to being a YouTuber, and I had a taste of what it could be like. I spent the next few months unable to shake how I felt that day. Like, I was on the verge of finally achieving everything I've always wanted, but now I was back to studying soul-sucking ones and zeros. After a lot of thought, I switched up my major to the closest thing my school offered to a film degree, and at the time it felt like I was quitting when the going got tough, but recursion and VS Code wasn't going to get me any closer to becoming a YouTuber. 6 months went by, and those conversations of what are you going to do once you're in the real world started to come up. When you're in school, you sort of have an excuse that you're studying, which satisfies adults, but outside of that, you're really just unemployed. I was entering my final semester of college, and my excuse of being a student wasn't going to cut it much longer. I felt pretty stuck at this point. I had just ended a 4-year relationship with my girlfriend at the time, and the weight of the world was getting to me. It felt like I was throwing all the good in my life away, but I was in desperate need of a reset. Now, all I had to worry about was myself and that silly YouTube dream of mine. It was a new chapter for me, letting go of everything I knew for the past 4 years, and funny enough, things started to work out. A week before school started, I got the text I had been waiting for. Steezy was in town and needed help with a video called How to Be Happy on Sneeko's channel. And just like that, I was back, making videos with other creatives that also shared the same passion, a thing I craved for the longest time. I had a couple months left in school for a degree that really didn't matter. There was still that impossible dream of being a YouTuber, and I was getting closer, I just didn't know how to get there yet. It was 2 months before I graduated. I had no jobs lined up, and I began brainstorming excuses of what to tell the adults if any of them came asking, but my luck hadn't run out just yet. Another YouTuber was in town, and he wasn't just visiting, he was here to stay. Kelly Wacasa was moving to New York City with a couple other creators and posted on his story that he was looking for a filmer in New York City. You best believe I name dropped the heck out of that DM. Honestly forgot about the whole thing, but 1 week later I received a message back. Kelly had seen my DM, hit up Steezy, he vouched for me, and the next thing I knew, I was skipping class to film for Kelly Wakasa. We started off doing some trial runs at first, and I was a little lost with filming, but a huge thing that got Kelly excited was the fact that I was able to ride a boosted board and film at the same time. I guess all those quarantine hours weren't for nothing. It wasn't long before we stopped doing trial runs, and Kelly hired me as his official filmer. When I graduated, I moved back with my parents and would take the train down to the city to film whenever Kelly needed me. Now, when the adults asked, I was a videographer down in New York City. Similar to in high school when I was known as the YouTube guy, word got around that I was the filmer guy in New York. I started getting hit up by other creators in the city and working for them too. I really wasn't making much at the time, but I didn't do it for the money. I just finally loved making videos with other creators, and even though it wasn't from my channel, in a way, it felt like I was a YouTuber too. On these back-to-back days, Kelly would let me crash at your mom's house, or I started sleeping over at my sister's apartment on her couch. These couch surfing days were some of my favorite days, and I remember thinking, oh, my story arc's gonna be crazy. After working for Kelly for a couple of months, I asked if I could film a behind-the-scenes video for my channel, and Kelly helped me take the thumbnail for it. This was a huge deal for me. It was essentially my first collab with another YouTuber, and I was straight up using his name for clout. But it worked. The views just kept pouring in, and in a couple of days my channel went from 2,000 subscribers to nearly 20,000 subscribers. It was finally working, and I was on my way to becoming a YouTuber. That video sits around 200,000 views now, and one of those many viewers was a kid that had just moved to the city. Tay just DM'd me and we clicked instantly. I started hanging out in the city with him even when I wasn't filming, and he had a really nice couch. We were a great duo, and he really took me under his wing to show me the ropes of the creator world that he was a part of. Around this time, I ended up meeting more creators, one of which being a girl named Kariza. She was hot, talented, and way out of my league. A sweet concoction of everything a boy could dream of, and she came to visit me while I was still in my couch surfing days. But it couldn't work, because I lived in New York City and she lived all the way in Canada. Right? After a year of couch surfing, Shervin and Tejas approached me and said I needed to move to the city. They were looking for a third roommate, and I was so in. No more couches, no more commuting, and my very own bed in New York City. I figured it'd take a while before we found a place, but 3 weeks after that conversation, I was moving out of my parents' house and into a small closet in one of the busiest cities in the world. We wanted to see what would happen if we committed to being YouTubers for a year, and thus the content closet was born. In the beginning of that year, I made a video titled, I Chased My Dreams for a Year, This Is What Happened. The difference between me trying to be a YouTuber in high school versus now is back then I hadn't lived life yet. I didn't have any stories to tell, but in this video I was able to talk about all the crazy things that happened to me in that past year. We had to call the fire department because that video spread like a wildfire and wouldn't slow down until it hit 1 million views. I gained over 40,000 new subscribers in that week, and just like that, I had over 60,000 subscribers on my channel. This was a wake-up call for me, and I decided that I couldn't ignore my channel any longer. I had spent the last year or so working with so many creatives, and now it was time to apply what I've learned to my own channel. It was a scary step, but I slowly started taking on less and less filming gigs. And with that newfound time, the world was mine to make it my own. This video was the first time I had found a style that I could call my own, and I spent every video building upon that. Each video challenged the last, implementing new techniques and more characters. I was learning a lot, practicing a lot, and for the first time ever, my YouTube channel was making some money. The content closet was growing, my friends were growing, and in December 2023, while back home where it all started, I hit 100,000 subscribers. I had done it. I was finally a YouTuber. 2024 brought a new switch up to my lifestyle. I felt confidence in that I was now my own creator in the space, and I got to travel all over the world. This past year alone, I've been on countless flights and to 11 different countries. Oh, and remember that super hot, talented Life of Riza girl? We're coming up on 2 years together now. Honestly, life has been kind to me thus far, and I couldn't have done it with all the support I've been shown. My parents allowed me to take the path less traveled, and even though there's still so many uncertainties, it's kind of cool figuring out life day by day. My friends pushed me further than even I thought was possible, and I wouldn't be here without the Content Closet boys. And you all, for watching this very video right now. If it wasn't for your support tuning into each video, except this one, we were kind of missing a little support on this one, but thank you to you who's watching this right now. It's because of you that I get to live out my crazy dreams, and that's kind of all what life's about. So that's the story about my life, and hopefully, it's just the beginning.